Jason, thank you for talking to me. Before I ask your involvement in the marriage equality campaign, can you tell me why marriage equality is so important to you?
Well, we've been non-legally married now for almost 16 years. So as a marriage celebrant and former religious minister, marriage is always something I sort of wanted to do. We got married, made it all up in the year 2000 out at the Museum of Modern Art, Heidi in Templestowe. Had 80 guests. None of us had been to a gay wedding before. That was really beautiful. And then in 2004, we were married in Canada at Toronto City Hall, so we could be legally married somewhere in the world, on the same trip that we started the process of having our son. And we just think that we should be treated equally. Like, it's really important for me. And it's been, 16 years.
You got married in 2004 in Canada. You came back to Australia and you challenged the Australian government. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Adrian was working with a lady who knew another female couple who'd just gone to Canada and gotten married, Jackie and Sarah. And they said we wanted to test our legality of our marriages. So we knew that under Australian law then that we were married, but it hadn't been tested. So we, in a nice way, not being really agitative or anything, we asked the family court to validate our Canadian marriages. And a week and a half or so before the court date, the federal government under Mr. Howard changed the Marriage Act. And we were in the Hansard of that whole thing. So we are partly responsible for the Marriage Act changes, and that was really depressing. And that's been over 11 years now.
Do you think it was done to spite you, partly?
Not to spite us, but we brought it to the forefront. It was an election year, and they thought they had votes in it, so they changed the Marriage Act. And interestingly, it took them, 10 minutes to change the act. When now they talk about we need a, $150 million plebiscite that will take many months and much money and cause much mental distress to change it back again.
Which brings me to my next question. What are your views of the plebiscite?
Terrible idea. I am preparing for it, both politically and with people that we know, because I think it's going to cause a lot of mental harm and anguish for LGBTI people, and because there will be a fully funded no campaign. So there'll be advertisements saying how bad we are, and particularly as a parent, it'll be how bad it is that children don't have a mother and a father and all those other lies that get said. So I think it's a terrible idea. The Parliament should do its job and vote, have a free vote. Actually, they could have a binding vote. It's a human rights issue. It's not something to be voted on really at the end of the day. Is there something wrong with me? I mean, the question is there something wrong with me? Well, the answer to that is no. And if there's nothing wrong with me, then I deserve to be treated as a first-class citizen like everyone else.
Why do you think Australian politicians have been so slow to come on board?
Personally, I think that there are too many religious politicians, and there are too many politicians who have led their ear to right-wing Christian, in particular, lobbyists and other mainstream religious lobbyists. And they've been afraid. They think there's votes in holding the stance that they do. And my understanding is that 70% of the Liberal Nationals don't want change, and 30% of the Labor side don't want change. And between it, it's made a real mess. And my also understanding is that we're about 6 votes short in the lower house and 1 or 2 short in the upper house as we speak. So there's not been a will. And if we don't agitate for change, if we don't get out there and have those conversations with people and say, no, hey, we need to do something, we'll be sitting here for another 10 years. Already, it's at least 2 years away. Because the plebiscite will, if the Liberal Party win, will be in 2017. Likewise, if Labor win, the free vote won't be till 2017. So the absolute earliest anyway for marriage equality is 2017.
Do you think there's still a window for the Prime Minister to change his mind on the plebiscite?
The Prime Minister, of course, can change his mind, but then giving no mention of doing that. So the process in place is we are up for a plebiscite in 2017, if he wins.
So regardless of a plebiscite, do you think marriage equality here in Australia is inevitable?
No, nothing's inevitable. The Republican movement was enshrined in Labor policy in the early 20th century, and it's still not happened. If we give up or go quiet, because there's not a strong enough will in the leadership for it to change, it won't happen. So I don't think it's inevitable at all. And the fact that I've been waiting over 16 years, shows you that it's not inevitable.
You're a marriage celebrant.
Yep.
What are the reactions of the people that you've married towards marriage equality?
It's been a real change in the last 4 or 5 years. So 4 or 5 years ago, nobody ever talked about it. Now, probably a quarter of the couples I marry ask for, which I can't say, but ask for somebody in their bridal party to say that we don't believe in the current status of the marriage law in Australia, and we think that everybody should be treated equally, or words to that effect. That's been a really nice, encouraging change, and people are irritated now, and it's increasing. It's not decreasing.
Why do you think many politicians, I mean the Greens in general have been on board for some time, and we've had the ALP, many members come out and support, even Liberals and members of other parties, as well as the public, why do you think a lot of them support marriage equality now and not before?
Well, if I look back 10, 12 years ago, I think a lot of us we may have been out in our private circles, but we weren't out in our workplaces and in public. And I think that's been the shift in the last decade. And I think that's decreased ignorance and caused most people to understand that, gee, my friend John or Sue, they're gay or they're lesbian or they're transgender, and I love my friends and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's been a real shift, that we're out now in our workplaces, that we're out now in our normal life appropriately. So we're not hiding anymore.
How do you convince people who perhaps oppose marriage equality on religious, cultural or traditional grounds?
Okay, so 74% of weddings now and increasing civil marriages, and the other 26% and decreasing. It decreased 2% in the last 3 years, are in religious services. The changes to the Marriage Act don't affect them at all. They can still add whatever they want to their marriage license laws, but it means that 75% almost of the population who should be able to get married civilly and not have religious issues can do that. And I think they have nothing to worry about. Nothing's going to change for them. They can do whatever they like. Marriage is evolving. Marriage is not about the ownership of a woman as a piece of property anymore. And it's something, I do 50 to 70 weddings a year. The legalities is important, but it's actually about having all your key friends and family together in the same space, pausing for a day and celebrating love and what you have. And it gives couples tremendous energy and goodwill and love. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. And I do same-sex weddings, but they're not legal, but they are just every bit as special, because those couples who've been together often 10, 15, 20 years are being celebrated for all the love they have.
You've touched upon it in the answer you just gave, but what do you say to people who perhaps have concerns, including members of the LGBTQI community, that marriage is very much an outdated or patriarchal institution, or even a very heterosexual institution, and we're aping and buying into that?
Look, marriage is not for everybody, straight or gay. Nobody's asking anybody to get married, but it is the benchmark for basic equality in modern Australian society, and the Western society in particular. And so if you don't want to get married, fine. There are de facto laws and things in place that will take care of you. If you want whatever construction you want to have around your family creation is up to you, and that's fine. But there's still a place. Marriage is not going out of fashion. In fact, if anything, it's probably more meaningful than it's ever been, because it's two people choosing to celebrate what they have. They've often been together for 5 or 10 years with their key friends and family, and saying, we love each other and we want all of our key people with us on that day. And that's a nice thing. We don't have that many great days in life, and that's one of the really good ones.
Is there a danger that marriage equality could stigmatise couples who choose to be together but choose not to get married?
Perhaps there is, but it doesn't stigmatise couples now who choose to be, I know many of them straight ones who are deliberately not been married but have been together 30 years. They're not stigmatised. They have great lives. How people create their own families and have formed their own relationships is a wonderful thing, and it's up to each individual. And I don't see any threat in that. I don't see how all it does is make a whole stack of other people happier. It doesn't hurt anybody. My marriage doesn't affect your marriage.
Now, you're standing as a senator for a party that you helped co-found, the Australian Equality Party. Could you tell us a bit about the background to that party, please?
Well, I was sitting with the Jackie and Sarah and my husband Adrian and another female couple just over 2 years ago after the last election, and we were worrying about what was going to happen federally for the advancements of our rights as LGBTI citizens. And I actually said, we can't just sit around and whinge. We need to do something about it, and I think we need an independent voice inside the federal parliament. And that was the start of the conversation that formed the Australian Equality Party. So we are a centrist, independent voice that seeks to have federal representation. So imagine having someone, because right now if you're Jackie Lambie or Ricky Muir or whoever you are, you get a voice. You get on radio and television and in the media because you're an elected parliamentarian. If we have an independent voice that will speak for our entire community, which is around 2 million Australians, imagine telling our stories, what that can do. And it's not, marriage we actually haven't talked about marriage very much at all. We will use marriage as one of our key planks this year, but there are, we found 30 pages of policy area for full inclusion for us. And it's not even about being tolerated. We need to be not tolerated, not accepted, but actually embraced and celebrated and fully immersed as part of Australian society.
You're standing as a senator here in Victoria at the 2016 federal election.
Yes.
What do you think are your chances?
There's one soft seat up for grabs in Victoria, and there's 6 nationally all up. We'll run candidates in the whole country. We think we're a good chance for that last seat. There's a bit of luck involved, but we are working our behinds off to give ourselves the best possible chance. And we spent 2 and a bit years doing all the groundwork and setting the foundation, and we have our election campaign and process in place ready for next year. We're a chance, real chance.
And of course, as you've already highlighted, marriage equality isn't your only platform, your only policy. But do you think the fight for LGBTQI rights ends with marriage equality?
Oh, no. Marriage is only the beginning. I'm upset that marriage sucks out too much energy sometimes, but I can't give blood. I can't, well actually as of this week, I can now adopt in Victoria, as of yesterday. But we can't form families easily. I've lost jobs for being gay. There is still discrimination in place. So just personally for me, there's a lot to happen. If you're a transgender person or intersex person, there are a whole stack of things that need to happen. If you're a bisexual person, you're ignored. And I look forward to marriage passing so we can talk about the other things that need to happen. And there's a lot of things that need to happen. And the further you get out from the city, the more that needs to happen.
Of course, the big issue, one of them here in Australia, the plebiscite, and everything, it's brought it even more into the open, is marriage equality. And some people have argued that it overshadows all those other LGBTQI issues. Does it, or does it give them more of a platform?
I actually think it gives them more of a platform. I actually think they're all lumped in together. For the non-LGBTI person, they see that as the bench head, if you like. So we need to make the most of that. But we're preparing, not just for the election campaign, we're preparing for the plebiscite. I'm going to make sure that we have a process in place where we are on the front foot and not allowing what is quite simply rubbish and lies to be said about us.
Now, you've been very involved in the marriage equality campaign, and of course we all know about the Australian Marriage Equality Organisation, and you were there in the early days.
One of the original founders, yes.
What are your thoughts on it and how it's developed?
I love what they do. Rodney and quite a few of the team there are good friends of mine. I support them wholeheartedly in what they're doing. They're very, very good at what they're doing. They're in the right place to have a real say over the next 2 years. And anybody in our community who works tirelessly over a long period of time deserves to be applauded. People don't have to agree with everything that everyone ever says, but Rodney and crew have done the hard yards for a long period of time, and they deserve to be respected for that.
What advice would you give to the current campaigns, if you could give any?
No, I have an idea of what the campaign is, and I'm totally supportive of what they're trying to do. And it's about changing the actual politicians' minds. So getting those last 6 votes to change their minds so that we can then say, look, the Parliament actually will vote yes. We don't need a $150 million plebiscite. Telling the stories, going out into electorates and having the conversations with the people who actually at the end of the day have the balance of power on all of this.
And you've mentioned it just now, but in general, how can people watching this video who support marriage equality get involved?
Lots of ways. You can donate money to people like Australian Marriage Equality. You can donate money to the Australian Equality Party. You can vote. You can even potentially be a candidate. But you can actually, at the end of the day, go and tell your story to your local politician, either in the Senate or the lower house, particularly if they're voted no. And you can find out online if they're voted no, and you can tell them, this is my story about my family, and that actually is the most powerful thing we can do. Because it's true, it's honest, and it's very hard and it's what's caused some change. It's very hard for a politician to sit in front of a same-sex parented family or a same-sex couple, and then go, oh, they need to represent those people.
You are a father yourself, and I don't know if you followed the campaign and the referendum in the Republic of Ireland. Often the arguments used by those who oppose marriage equality were about the family, were about the rights of the children. How do you react to that?
Personally, it makes me very angry. Children don't need a mother and a father. Children need one decent parent, and if they've got two decent parents of either sexuality or gender, they are set. That's a lie, and the research supports that too, and in my personal experience of 10 years supports that. So it upsets me, but I'm prepared to put my personal hurt or upset around those things aside to fight what needs to be fought. And we will stand up against organisations that say such, what I term as rubbish, mistruths and lies. But that's where they can win, because they can go to that 20% of the population who are softly positive about marriage equality and say, oh no, children need a mother and a father, oh, what about all these things? And then people go into that voting booth and they'll vote no. And then it doesn't pass.
And finally, what advice would you give to somebody who's wavering on the issue, is unsure?
My marriage doesn't affect your marriage. In fact, if anything, if we're all happy and trying to make the best of our lives, it makes it better for everybody else. So there's nothing for you to fear. We just want everybody to, have a chance at having love and having the relationships that they want, whether they're married or they're not married. It's about equality, and we all pay our taxes. We all want to contribute. We all should be taken care of, and when you take care of marginalised people, you make it better for everybody else.
Jason, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.